All right, so we're going to continue our look at the book of Isaiah. We're in chapter 45, still within what they commonly refer to as the book of comfort. The book of comfort. And, we talked about prior to chapter 40, there was a declaration of judgment. And now we are in the part of the book they call the book of comfort. It's consolation. It's good news that Isaiah is bringing. And we last looked at chapter 44 and talked about Cyrus, and we're going to continue talking about Cyrus this evening. I think I heard or had read that the gentleman that put the chapters and the verses in the Bible, I think Stephanus, a monk named Stephanus, I think. I had read that he divided the book or the Bible into chapters and verses as he was riding a donkey. And sometimes when you're looking at how he's divided things, you might think he left some of it up to the donkey to do, because chapter 44 really it's the same thought. You start looking at it from verse 24. Thus saith the Lord thy Redeemer, and he that formed thee from the womb. I am the Lord that maketh all things, that stretcheth forth the heavens alone, that spreadeth abroad the earth by myself, that frustrateth the tokens of the liars, and maketh diviners mad, that turneth wise men backward, and maketh their knowledge foolish, that confirmeth the word of his servant, and performeth the counsel of his messengers, that saith to Jerusalem, thou shalt be inhabited, to the cities of Judah ye shall be built, and I will raise up the decayed places thereof, that saith to the deep, be dry, and I will dry up thy rivers, that saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying unto Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple, thy foundation shall be laid. And so he ends up chapter 44 there for some reason, because he starts back in verse 1 of 45. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before thee, and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass, and cut in sunder the bars of iron. And I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord which call thee by thy name, am the God of Israel. For Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. So the prophecy concerning Cyrus continues. And some of the same thoughts that we see in chapter 44, 24 and on, for instance, the drying up of the rivers, that's going to become important there. It continues on into chapter 45. So we're going to, first of all, see, I'll come back to this. We're going to see that God commissions the unlikely, verses 1 through 7. God commissions the unlikely. God demands trust and not debate, in verses 8 through 13, and we'll discuss what that means. God draws the nations to himself, verses 14 through 19. And then finally, God vindicates the faithful, verses 20 through 25. Your handout should have this outline on it, and if you'd like to follow it along. So God, one of the main ideas of this chapter is that God does exactly what he intends to do. God will accomplish his purposes, always has, and has done it in the way that he sees fit. And if he sees it fit, that's the way it ought to be. So Isaiah here, just to give some background of what's happened in secular history. This is all confirmed by secular history. Babylon fell to Cyrus, again, back up. Isaiah, I'll remind you, is telling Judah what's going to happen, names him by name over 150 years before the man's born. And he even repeats, as we just read there, I have surnamed thee. I've named you. I've given you a name, though thou hast not known me. So does it sound like Cyrus is familiar with God, with the God? No, he's not, or not at that point. So we know from secular history that Cyrus would, in fact, come 150 or so years after Isaiah, and he would take down the Babylonian Empire, which I'll remind you also, you would not think, if it were on Polymarket, you would not have put your bet on Babylon becoming the world power. But that's what happened. Isaiah told us about it, and that's exactly what happened. So Cyrus is named as the one that will take them down by extension. In verses 27, we have something interesting there. That saith to the deep, be dry, and I will dry up thy rivers. And then moving on, in verse 2, of chapter 45, I will go before thee, make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass and cut in sunder the bars of iron. Backing up before that, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. So what do we know from secular history? A pretty genius tactic on Cyrus's part. He took Babylon without drawing a sword, basically, without a battle taking place. And the way he did that was the city of Babylon sat, basically, the river Euphrates went through Babylon, the city of Babylon. And they had a wall all around the city, and where the river was, they had gates. Now, what Cyrus did was he redirected the river Euphrates before it got to Babylon. And so the water is no longer going through these gates. And so the gates are wide open, and the Persians just came on in, and Babylon's theirs. Pretty remarkable, isn't it? It's confirmed from secular history here. The Cyrus Cylinder, the Nabonidus Chronicle, confirmed this bloodless fall here. As verse 2, the gates shall not be shut. They just marched right in, probably through some sludge, but they made it in there and took the city of Babylon. Here you have as the map the Euphrates here, Babylon, Cyrus's advance along this area. Babylon, ancient Babylon, is actually directly south of modern-day Baghdad. And so that's, you'll see the Tigris River here, the Euphrates, Babylon's right on it, and that's how Cyrus took it. And Isaiah, because God told him, predicted this, told us about this. Any comments or questions? All right, so chapter 45, verses 1 through 7, it speaks of God commissioning the unlikely. And by the way, remember, we discussed at length those who are skeptics of the book of Isaiah that entertained the Deutero-Isaiah theory that there were multiple authors of the book. You see why? You see why they have to do that? Because it's very specific on who this is and what he does and how he does what he does. And God foretold it. This book must be from one who is outside of the timeline in which we are limited. It must be from God. But God commissions the unlikely. And I know we've read it, but could somebody read for us verses 1 through 7? chapter 45, verses 1 through 7.
This is what the Lord says to his anointed, Cyrus. Whose right hand I take hold of to subdue nations before him and split kings of their armor. To open doors before him so that gates will not be shut. I will go before you and will level the mountains. I will break down gates of bronze and cut through bars of iron. I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord, the God of Israel, who summons you by name. For the sake of Jacob, my servant, of Israel, my chosen, I will summon you by name, and bestow on you a title of honor, so you do not acknowledge me. I am Lord, and there is no other. Apart from me, there is no God. I will strengthen you, though you have not acknowledged me, so that from the rising of the sun to the place of its setting, people may know there is none besides me. I am the Lord, and there is no other. I form the light and create darkness, I bring prosperity and create disaster. I, the Lord, do all these things.
All right. Thank you, brother. So here, what does it say? God is he is addressing who directly? Who's he talking to when he says, I have, well, I mean, the answer's in verse 1. His anointed, who is? Cyrus, right? So he's speaking directly to Cyrus here before Cyrus is born, before the captivity begins, before Babylon even shows up as or becomes the world power that they would become about 100 or so years after Isaiah, before any of this. And by the way, it is unthinkable that a nation, an empire would capture a people and those people maintain their identity afterwards at this stage. The Hittites, heard of them? Their national identity dissolved, as did many other nations at that time. The fact that you would predict not only that this nation would come and become the world power, then they would take over, they would bring Judah, carry everybody away in the captivity, and somehow those people maintain their identity throughout all those years, highly unlikely. Isaiah is speaking to all of this. This is just one little prediction, one prediction, though small, is huge. See how many things are branching off of just one prediction? So Isaiah is speaking not because Isaiah knows these things, but because God, he is the spokesman, the messenger from God. And so he calls Cyrus here his anointed. His anointed. I think I've got, no, I don't have that one, which there, the Hebrew word for that is Mashiach. Mashiach. And that word is where we get the term Messiah. Here it's applied to Cyrus, who is, Isaiah says repeatedly, God says repeatedly through Isaiah, you don't know me. You don't know me. Who, Isaiah? Okay, so this is more or less. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he specifically did. There are some interesting things about history. His audience is Judah here, right? And those that would go in captivity. And he's speaking, what kind of literature is this? It's poetry, right? So does it make sense that you might be the audience, but he's speaking to someone else as though he's speaking to him directly? Does that make sense?
He knows what he's going to do,
Mm-hmm.
and what he reacts to, and how he reacts to those things. He knows the things are set in motion. He'll do those things.
Mm-hmm. Well, an interesting thing is, I know you had your hand up, but an interesting thing is, so to further prove that Cyrus, as Isaiah says, did not know God, did not know him, it's also in secular history recorded that he, for political purposes, was just open to religion. In fact, when they took Babylon, Cyrus openly worshipped Marduk, which is a Babylonian god. Persia would be the origin of Zoroastrianism. You guys heard that name, Zoroastrianism, and which is makes verse 7 interesting because their top god was Mazda. There's another word before Mazda, but Mazda, like the car you drive, that is a god, a Zoroastrian god, and he was the god of light, right? What's he say in verse 7? I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. But when Cyrus took Babylon, he told the Babylonians, your God appointed me, which I find interesting. So maybe he's heard something. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think we can confirm that. He had, yes. I think it's highly likely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I mean, if I read my name and I knew it was written 150 years before I was born, it might inspire me to do something about it, right? Yep. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Right. Actually, this was Cyrus too. Cyrus the Great, I think maybe, but his name, he was the second. He had his dad's name, but Linda, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Generations come up afterward, right? Generations, and especially someone coming from far east who's probably not going to be familiar until somebody, maybe Ezra, maybe shares something with them. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, we know Daniel had that, absolutely. Yep. The fact that it survived kings that were hostile to them. But here, the root Messiah. Did you have your hand? Oh, you? Yeah. I saw out of the corner of my eye your hand. Oh, okay.
So, you mentioned this. I think it's worth expanding on a little bit. Is that Cyrus was chosen because he was very unusual as a leader at that point, where when he conquered, he allowed the nation to maintain. Right?
Yep.
So you mentioned that. Very unusual at that point. It really never been done. It's usually just a massacre, or you have to worship our gods. And you mentioned that's really unusual. And so just for God to choose Cyrus, knowing Cyrus was going to be that kind of innovative ruler, it's why he was able. It's very similar to Alexander the Great, who did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was able to conquer and rule the world because he allowed you not to change the culture.
Yep.
And yet you paid him.
Yep. Absolutely.
Really smart thing.
Yep. And I think part of his psyche there was accepting the religions, being open to all these different religions as well. So absolutely. Yep. Let me make sure I'm not going to touch on. So Cyrus God knows everything about Cyrus, doesn't he? Do you think that's an isolated incident where God knew Cyrus's name before he came on the scene, or God knew what his character was, that he would have the propensity and the foresight to say, hey, I can rule better if I just let people keep their culture and even return them back to where they were stolen from, right? You think that's an isolated incident where God just knew Cyrus? Just got lucky? Yeah. Does he tell Jeremiah before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you?
See, that's what's always bothering me about the attack on Cyrus,
Mm-hmm.
is it's not an attack on Cyrus, it's an attack on the body.
Mm-hmm.
Because Cyrus is nothing compared to prophecies pointing to Christ.
Yeah.
And the specificity throughout the scripture, if Cyrus is impossible, then all of this is.
Mm-hmm.
The religious folks who claim to be biblical scholars, who then try to claim that there's somehow Deutero, Isaiah, this isn't, prophecy, they're throwing out the rest of the Bible.
Yep. Because what else does Isaiah predict that's even longer, as if time has anything to do with it, but even further out, 700 years or so. Yeah, we have the birth of a child to a virgin, right? So it goes far further than just Cyrus, right? But he knew Cyrus, he knew his name, he knew what he had the capacity to do, he knew his capabilities. You think he knew yours? You think he knew what your proclivities would be, what your skills would be, your nature? And do you think he knew, who's the bringer and who's the teacher, who's the keeper, who's got their skills at these things? And then could Cyrus have done something completely different than what he did? Could he have just kept them in the various places where the Babylonians and the Assyrians had carted them off to? He could have done that. So we need to be mindful that it's not an isolated incident, that God knew Cyrus before Cyrus was Cyrus, and he knew me. He knew Steve before Steve was Steve. He knew my capabilities, and I better use those. I better be active in using those things. Make sense? So 7 things are being mentioned here in verses 1 through 2. 7 modes of divine action. He says, I will subdue nations. I will loose the loins of kings. I will open the gates. I will go before him, straighten crooked places, break the gates of brass, cut bars of iron. And so this is a pattern of things that is basically saying God is covering everything. All of these things are it's not Cyrus doing these things. This is God's will being carried out through these things. Again, Mashiach, root word of Messiah, being applied to Cyrus, a pagan Gentile. I've read some things where, probably outside of the Brotherhood, where they have wanted to say, well, Cyrus is going to be in heaven because of this. No. God has used, and I've said this before, and God has used the willing, the unwilling, and the unwitting alike to accomplish his purposes. When God says he's anointed Cyrus is the anointed one. Cyrus is, whether he wants to or not, whether he knows he is or not, he is accomplishing the purposes of God. And what is that purpose? What's that? Salvation's plan. It wasn't just about giving them back Temple Mount. giving them back Jerusalem. It wasn't about a piece of real estate. That piece of real estate was a small point to bring all of mankind back to reconciliation with God. And a lot of people lose that. They want to focus on that piece of real estate. It's way more than that. So again, I discussed verse 7, how God said, I formed the light. So the head god of Zoroastrianism from Persia, probably Cyrus worshipped him. Mazda is the god of light. Let's just find that interesting. I form the light and create darkness. See here. Yep. So though this is, again, this is really to Sean's point. It's not about Cyrus, right? Cyrus is a small part of this. But the key is Christ. It's always pointed to Christ. Let's see here. So God demands trust, not debate. If I could have somebody read verses 8 through 13, please.
Shower from heaven, O God. Let the clouds rain down righteousness. Let the earth open. Let salvation and righteousness be their fruit. Let the earth cause its most Christ. I, the Lord, have created. Love to him who strives with him, who forms him, the pot of broken pot. Does the flame say to him who formed it, what are you making? Or your work has no skill. Woe to him who says to a father, what did you begin? Or to a woman who appointed you in labor? Thus says the Lord, the Holy One of Israel, the one who formed you, actually has things to come. For you command me to show you my children to the love of my name. I made the earth and created heaven with my hands to stretch out the heaven, and I commanded all their hosts. I have served him up in righteousness, and I will make all his ways right. He shall build my city, and set my exiles free, not for Christ, only this, says the Lord of hosts.
All right. Thank you, brother. So God here is declaring some woes here. After the military language of verses 1 through 7, he now pivots here, and he is portraying the blessings coming through Cyrus as rainfall here. And what happens with rainfall? Is it important to agriculture? Yeah, we have a picture of agriculture just sprouting out here in verse 8. Let righteousness spring up together. I, the Lord, have created it. I've got my slides out of order. So does that remind us of anything of this agricultural language, something springing forth, springing up? Let's look at chapter 53. Chapter 53, who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form or comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. So all of this is messianic. Everything points to Christ, and always has pointed to Christ. But here God is demanding trust. Now I could picture some of the captives, maybe some of Israel or Judah, saying, wait a second, you're using this pagan king. Why not use one of our people, right? Why not use somebody more righteous, somebody that's not bowing to Marduk and all these other gods? Why use him? And that could be the reason for why Isaiah shifts here in demanding trust from the people. Now, is there a difference between, I think we ought to pick up here because it's big. Remember what Job did? Did Job question God? Was the questioning, was he said to have sinned against God? No. So what's the difference? What's the difference between Job, and we even see some pottery language with Job, with how God responds to him, and we'll get to that next week. But there's a difference between I really want to give me another half hour. We'll pick up here next week. We'll talk about the difference between, say, what Job did, what Habakkuk did, and what Isaiah is warning the people against right here. Woe to him that striveth with his maker. The potsherd is arguing with his maker, right? And we'll get to that next week. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Job. I can't pick a point in Job to look at, but Habakkuk for sure. Habakkuk's a easy read, a quick read. So thank you. Thank you, guys.